Hey, good afternoon to you. It is 5:06 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we are making sense of the news. You can join us today at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Footage coming into us today from El Paso, Texas. Jenny Terror, reporter for the New York Post, posting it, showing hundreds of illegal aliens smashing through border barriers, running through the Texas National Guard who are trying to stop them, getting up to a fence, a wall of some kind as the National Guard tries to hold them at bay. We've got Bill Maluzhin tweeting here in the last 15 minutes, per Texas law enforcement sources, that these were several hundred illegal aliens, mostly single adult men, who rushed the soldiers. One of these men has been arrested so far for assaulting a soldier. More arrests are likely coming for destruction of property and more assaults. Of course, the arrest should also include invading our country. That should be one of the reasons for arresting them. For more on this topic and so much more, I want to bring in Lora Reis. She's the director of the Border Security and Immigration Center at the Heritage Foundation and joins us now. Lora, good to have you with us.
Thanks, Vince, for having me on.
So this is not obviously the beginning of the invasion, but they certainly are some of the most vivid images of it. What do you make of this?
Well, I'll say this is not convenient to those members of Congress who quickly wanted to pass the second omnibus bill of appropriations, which would continue to fund this madness, only then so that they could skip town for their 2-week recess. This causes a problem for them. It's not a good bill, and it would not secure the border.
So this bill, it just released this morning in the wee hours of the morning. Congress says that they're going to try and ram this through by tomorrow night. It's a $1.2 trillion spending package, and the big kahuna in this deal is the Department of Homeland Security. It looks like, based on what I've seen so far, Lora Reis, that Congress is going to fund all of these border invasion measures again, including paying these NGOs to bring illegals deep into our country.
Yes, it would give another $650 million to the FEMA Shelter and Services Program, which pays some of the NGOs internally and domestically, pays off some sanctuary cities. And both those entities, the NGOs and the sanctuary cities, they are on the ropes financially. They have burned through their money, and they have been begging for it, which is why President Biden and Secretary Mayorkas has been begging for more money. Congress should not give them more money. And then in addition to the DHS money is State Department money, including $3.9 billion to State Department to assist mass migration around the globe. And that is the beginning of the pipeline, which then sends people to the Western Hemisphere and up to our border.
Yeah, there's the New York Times claims there's a number of things that Republicans have gotten out of this bill, and supposedly there's some more funding for some border security measures, more funding for Border Patrol. But it seems to me that this is chump change. This is paltry, the amount that is dedicated to border security, and so much more is dedicated to bringing in foreign nationals. Am I right?
Yeah, it's a talking point, and it was a trap, and unfortunately some Republicans are going to fall for it. So it calls for more ICE detention beds, which will remain empty because this administration loathes immigration detention. It calls for more border agents, but this administration tells those border agents to process the illegal aliens into the country and send them north, hand them off to an NGO, and then those illegal aliens can go to wherever they want to go with a free plane ticket. And so that's why this bill would continue the open border operations that this administration has been carrying out now for over 3 years.
I just want to emphasize the madness of the politics of this moment, because the United States House of Representatives has impeached the head of the Department of Homeland Security, Alejandro Mayorkas, and now they're going to be giving him a lot more money to keep doing the things they impeached him for?
Exactly. It makes no sense. And frankly, I think many people have already forgotten that Mayorkas has been impeached. Those articles should have gone over to the Senate, and the more delay there is, the less likely Senate will hold an impeachment trial and hold him accountable and produce the evidence that Americans need to see, because this administration has been so deceitful about their open border operations, whether it's the NGOs or the night flights or the parole program of flying people directly into the U.S. to our ports. And so, yes, he should be held accountable and he should be convicted in the Senate. But this funding has delayed all that. And now here we are.
Yeah, from your in your sense of the border, your expertise on the border, why are the people who are tasked with guarding the border in such a feckless position? This video is really jarring for any number of reasons, but one of them is that the Texas National Guard, who are there trying to do their best to stop the invasion, they have long guns on them, but they're not using them. They're not pointing them at anybody. I don't even think they're loaded. They're just standing there. What's happening?
Yeah, I think this is, Texas is in a very difficult situation. It has done what it can in terms of calling the National Guard, placing them on the border, passing a Texas state law that says we're going to make it now a state crime in addition to a federal crime. If you illegally cross between ports of entry, we'll take you to court. That's now tied up in this bouncing between federal courts. And so I'm sure Texas is in a difficult situation of what the National Guard can or can't do. What if one of those aliens was shot and hurt? What if a National Guard was hurt? I mean, now we're dealing with assault. So the Biden administration is responsible for putting the migrants in this situation and for putting the National Guard in this situation, not to mention Americans. Yes,
definitely. And so I'm guessing you probably agree with me that if you're a member of the White House press corps today, you have an obligation to ask about the images we're seeing. It's not an option. This is a very pressing concern, and you have people's lives that are on the line on our border.
Right, and I dare Jean-Pierre to say, the border's secure, and Biden administration is doing everything he can.
Yeah,
it's Congress's fault.
It's
Go ahead
totally
and try that one.
Totally crazy. Okay, so on this bill, this $1.2 trillion spending package, do you sense that it's possible for it to be stopped? I mean, where are we in terms of this thing, or is it just going to be rammed through by the weekend?
It might be stopped. I mean, I heard yesterday they were having difficulty counting up enough votes for it to pass. And now with this video that's playing out today of what's happening on Texas and the National Guard being overrun.
Yes.
I think that may sway some people to the no column.
Everybody's sharing it. Speaker Mike Johnson's account just shared it just minutes ago. I mean, this is not, you can't avoid it that you're seeing these images. And so you think that could have a real impact on this debate?
I think so.
Okay. All right. Well, from your lips to God's ears, I really hope it does. Lora Reis over at the Heritage Foundation, thank you very much for your assessment today.
Thank you, Vince.
Good to talk to you as always. This is a wild time. This is a wild time, and that video. Here, let me see if I can play the audio for you. We've got audio from our border, El Paso, Texas, and the New York Post capturing it today. The sound of the invasion today. It starts with illegals, aliens, all men, military-age males, shoving. First of all, ripping the concertina wire open and then shoving on the few National Guardsmen who are standing there trying to stop them, and then breaking through their linked arms essentially, and getting past. And then they run towards a border barrier, a border wall that's there. I'm not sure if Texas manages it or not, but they're making their way layer by layer into the United States. Military-age males just banging now on the fencing, trying to make their way through. A member of the National Guard there in Texas yelling, "Get the F back," over and over. I'm not sure how fruitful that particular screaming was, and if he was able to stop these guys. But man, it's getting out of control, and people all across the United States are feeling it. There was a clip going viral this week from a show. I'm not sure it's a podcast or a radio show of some kind. It's called the TOBT Show, and we found it on YouTube. You can find it on YouTube, and it's there's a woman, a black resident of Chicago, who's at this live taping, and they're all sitting on a stage. They've got these microphones, the hosts of the show. It looks like there's about 4 of them. They're all chatting amongst themselves about what's happening in our country right now, this illegal invasion. And a black woman, Chicago resident, gets up there and says, yeah, this is a huge problem, all of these illegals in our community. They're taking all these resources. And so the host asks, and I thought an important question, who'd you vote for?
So they bringing them in. You wonder where the money coming from? They taking it. The COVID fund that was here, that money. Yep. You talking about all the pro housing programs. So when people pay rent, all the rental programs, that money, all the programs that we have in the city of Chicago, they are bankrupting us. They are taking from all of these programs that we have, and they're taking the money and they're funding the migrants. Yeah. Our taxpayers, we've already paid $32 million out of our taxes to house and take care of the migrants thus far. Now, we already know the only ones who qualify to become citizens in asylum here from the starts of if they were here after August, they don't even qualify. Period. But here we're going to be taking care of them for 5 to 7 years while there's paperwork floating on people's desk. And why? Send them home. Send them back. But Venezuela already said, oh, we're not taking them back.
Mm-hmm.
So now,
I got a question for you. Who did you vote for?
First of all, wait, I have no problem with saying that I did vote for Biden because I was not voting. Okay. I did. Okay, but here it is.
Hold on. Wait, that was the question. Okay. Now you answered it, right? Okay. This migrant influx that we're dealing with right now, this is your fault.
This is your fault. Now, she would go on to say that she's voting independent this cycle. She's not voting for Biden, which is full. She should vote for Trump, obviously. But he had her dead to rights. He's like, you don't like this? Guess who you voted for? Guess who put all the pieces in place? It was people like you voted for Biden and voted for this madness. By the way, Biden didn't keep it a secret. This is not like some underground plan that Biden had. It wasn't, this was all laid out. During the presidential campaign, he said, when he was asked about this, what he was going to do, he said he was going to encourage illegals to surge the border. His word, surge the border. He's fulfilling the promises of his campaign, and you voted for that. You voted for that. It wasn't a secret. It was out there in the open, and we're seeing it play out right now. All right, more of your calls in a moment. It's 5.
I would, in fact, make sure that we immediately surge to the border. All those people are seeking asylum. They deserve to be heard. That's who we are. We're a nation that says if you want to flee and you're fleeing oppression, you should come.
That's Biden back in the during the election. He said, if you're an illegal, you want to come to the United States, just do it. Why not? Just surge the border. And, of course, illegals have ever since he became president of the United States. And as they do, they've been deeply thankful to Joe Biden.
I love you, Joe Biden. Thank you for everything, Joe Biden.
Thank you for everything, Joe Biden, as people pour into the country.
And what is your message to the President of the United States?
Honestly, thank you for this opportunity because we have really bad, without your help, we wouldn't be here.
Yeah, we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for your help. Remember? And then, of course, you had like Griff Jenkins on the border talking to these guys, asking them, hey, what brings you here? It's Joe Biden. Thank you, Joe Biden. And you said, well, you're here illegally, right? Yes, illegally, not legally, illegally, people would brag. And now you have military-age males smashing through the Texas National Guard today, and they've arrested one guy for assault. What is this? Glenn calling in from Frederick now, line 2. Glenn, good afternoon. You're on the Vince Colonnade Show.
Hey, Vance, I just don't get this. How is it we put our military men and women out there to guard the border and then don't give them ammunition to defend the border? If one of those was my son or daughter, they'd be coming home because if you're not going to allow them to do their job and defend the country and shoot these illegals coming through here, then there's no need for them to be there. What's the purpose of them there?
I was thinking, Glenn, as I was watching this video today, they shot Ashley Babbitt for climbing through a window.
Yeah.
An American citizen, a veteran right here in the United States of America. What do you do when you have foreign nationals, military-age males, blasting through our border? They just they just let him go? Is that how this works? I mean, it's crazy. Yeah. It's one of the craziest things I've ever seen.
Yeah, apparently so. But yet nothing happens to the guy that shot Ashley Babbitt.
No, he's been lionized.
This is insane. Yeah, this is just insane.
Yeah, it is. Thank you, Glenn. Anita's calling in from Warrenton, line 1. Anita, good afternoon. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hey, thanks, Vince. The previous caller asked one of my questions, but my other question is that women in Chicago, how many years has she been voting for politicians who've been supporting making Chicago, keeping Chicago a sanctuary city? And she just realizes it now? Huh.
Yeah, it's disappointing. You hear it. I mean, the truth is people live in ignorance. Either that or they don't want to seriously reckon with the consequences of their own actions. And here she is. She was complaining about the circumstances there, and those hosts on stage wisely asking in Chicago, who'd you vote for? And she said Biden, and they didn't hold back. The guy immediately said, well, then this is your fault. And I think that was a staggering blow, but staggering because it was true. Anita, thank you. It's amazing. The only hope you have, though, you hear something like that, and you're like, okay, good. Are your eyes open yet? She says she's voting independent. She's like throwing her vote away, so I guess not fully open. They're creaking open. Oh, man. All right, stay with us. More of your calls ahead, keeping track of the news today. We've got a lot to get to, and I've got some more hilarious John Kennedy audio. He's literally just asks elementary school questions of Biden nominees, and they collapse. They're unable to put 2 and 2 together. Hey, good afternoon to you. It's 5:35 now, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we are making sense of the news. You can join us today at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. A new report out just in the last hour from the New York Post. Headline, CIA blocked feds from interviewing Hunter Biden's sugar brother, Kevin Morris, during their 5-year tax probe. The CIA blocked federal investigators from interviewing Hunter Biden's sugar brother, Kevin Morris. Kevin Morris, by the way, just before, they use the phrase sugar brother. It almost gives too much credence to the idea that this guy, this Hollywood attorney, is actually, lifelong friends with Hunter. Is just helping him out with all that extra money he's got lying around. No, he's a Biden donor who met Hunter at a Joe Biden fundraiser and realized this kid's a massive liability for the Biden campaign. I'm going to resolve his financial obligations to the IRS, and he did. And he's been paying all of Hunter Biden's bills ever since. Sugar brother. So the CIA blocked federal investigators from interviewing the guy. Apparently, what's the CIA doing getting involved with this? During the 5-year probe into the first son's alleged tax crimes, according to a whistleblower who's told House impeachment leaders, House Oversight and Judiciary Committee chairmen say the whistleblower informed them that the intelligence agency stopped IRS and Justice Department investigators from interviewing Morris in August of 2021. So that would be when Joe Biden controlled the CIA. Morris is a Hollywood lawyer and a patron of the first son. This is all revealed today in a letter that was sent by the House Republicans to CIA Director William Burns. The whistleblower informed Oversight Chairman James Comer and Judiciary Chairman Jim Jordan that 2 Justice Department officials were summoned to CIA headquarters in Langley, Virginia, and told, quote, Morris could not be a witness for their investigation into Hunter Biden. Why is that? If Morris was at the center of all of this, if he's paying the money, if he's buying the artwork, which he has been, why can't he be involved in the investigation here? Why can't he be a witness? Quote, it is unknown why or on what basis the CIA allegedly intervened. The CIA, which again is supposed to be concentrated on foreign threats. It is unknown why or on what basis the CIA allegedly intervened to prevent investigators from interviewing Mr. Morris, Comer and Jordan wrote in their letter, which was obtained by the New York Post. Quote, however, these allegations track with other evidence showing how the DOJ deviated from its standard investigative practices during the investigation of Hunter Biden. The Republican lawmakers added that the account, quote, seems to corroborate our concerns about DOJ's deviations from standard process to provide Hunter Biden with preferential treatment, end quote, which have been unearthed as evidence during their impeachment inquiry into his father, President Biden. They did ask the CIA to provide all records in its possession relating to the DOJ and IRS investigation of Hunter Biden or to Kevin Morris. The Post has reached out to the CIA for a comment. Yeah, and this is consistent, as the Post goes on to say here with what the IRS whistleblower said, which is that there were people constantly interfering in the Hunter Biden investigation. They had never seen this. These were some of the top IRS investigators in the entire country with a long career of having looked into this type of tax crime, and they were running into walls they had never encountered before in their entire career, including when they would find interesting lines of inquiry, including like what's going on with dad here, that is Joe Biden. They were told, you're not to ask about dad, you're not to ask about the big guy. You're not to investigate that. And then when they would prepare major steps in their investigation, you had people within the U.S. Attorney's Office in Delaware finding out about the investigative acts and telling the Biden family before they took place. So all of a sudden, a storage unit that they wanted to investigate, the Biden family was tipped off the day before. How interesting. Enough time to clean up the scene. Before interviews all across the country with Hunter Biden and business associates, everybody was tipped off. And almost nobody ended up giving any meaningful answers to investigators because they seemed to be prepared for the questions. That's what the IRS whistleblower said. And now this is the latest. Now the CIA is involved in this. Now the CIA is involved. Not the first time we've heard of the CIA being involved in political shenanigans here in the United States. You've also know, of course, about the role that the CIA, including active duty CIA officials, seem to have played in the Hunter Biden laptop saga, trying to suppress that news ahead of the 2020 election. That was all very much coordinated between current and former officials, trying to create the impression that Hunter Biden's laptop was just Russian disinformation and you're a fool if you share it, and that all these big tech companies had to take it down. So the CIA, once again, which should be focused on other countries, focused on ours, which is, just another sign that your government's completely out of control. I wanted to tell you about Senator John Kennedy and what he's been up to. I played some audio for you earlier in a crazy climate hearing yesterday where he was talking to a cross-country skier who didn't know about anything, really. He's like, do you even know what carbon dioxide is? He's like, not much of an expert. Well, that's funny because you're testifying as an expert right now. John Kennedy also yesterday, the great John Kennedy of Louisiana, was quizzing United States District Judge Nancy Maldonado. She has been nominated for a seat by Joe Biden. She's been nominated for a seat on the United States Court of Appeals for the 7th Circuit. And she was in for her hearing yesterday. John Kennedy pointed out to her, some time ago, you signed off on a brief defending a ban on so-called assault weapons that was challenged in those Illinois state courts back in the early 2010s. So Kennedy cited her work here and said, you signed off on banning assault weapons. What's an assault weapon? Do you think you could define that for us, please?
You said, quote, assault weapons may be banned because they're extraordinarily dangerous and are not appropriate for legitimate self-defense purposes, close quote. Tell me what you meant by assault weapons.
Thank you, Senator Kennedy. Just to clarify there, I was local counsel. Our Supreme.
Yeah, but you wrote the brief. Tell me what you meant by assault weapons.
Senator Kennedy, actually, I did not write the brief. The brief was written by.
You signed the brief, though, didn't you?
Correct. I signed the brief.
When you sign a brief, you're testifying to the court that everything in it is true, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So
they're your words in terms of the court, right?
Well, you're correct, Senator Kennedy.
Okay.
I would never sign.
Tell me what you meant by assault weapons.
So I am not a gun expert, and at the time, that brief I think was about 10 years.
You were giving the court advice about, say, ban assault weapons. What is? You told the court you were an expert. Just tell me what you wanted to ban.
Senator, sitting here today, as I said, I did not write that brief. I was local counsel.
Sign the brief.
I understand. At the time,
tell me what you wanted to ban. That's all I want to know, Judge.
I don't remember the exact definition of assault weapons in the ordinance that was at issue.
So you submitted a brief to an appellate brief. You signed it, and you don't know what And you said abolish assault weapons, and you don't know what you wanted them to abolish?
Senator, at the time that I signed the brief, I read the brief because our Supreme Court required.
Isn't it so funny that, like, this is not a new thing that John Kennedy will ask you to answer basic questions about the competency that's required for the job, or he might look into your background and ask you something about some sort of important political decision that you were involved in, right? You would think that if you were preparing for the confirmation hearing and you knew John Kennedy was going to be there, you'd probably go over, maybe in a little more detail than normal, your career, the things you were a part of, what you signed on to, and feel like, and make sure you have a complete understanding of the answers to all these questions. Instead, you get embarrassments like this.
I want an Illinois bar member to sign the brief. I was not responsible for researching the content.
Yeah, that's right. So you sign stuff. She's one of these people that doesn't read the terms and conditions. And by the way, sweetheart, I'm right there with you. Sometimes I don't read them. I click OK. I'll just advance through this. But she's the lawyer here. She's supposed to be signing onto a brief that she's read and understands. And she's like, I just signed onto it. So I don't know. An assault weapon, whatever those are. By the way, assault weapon is just a way to describe a gun that cosmetically scares the left. That's literally the definition of it. It looks scary to a lefty. That's what an assault weapon is. That category of weapon, that is rifles, long rifles, are used very, very little in the commission of crimes. Very little. In fact, knives, fists, feet, blunt objects, far more frequently used in homicides than any long gun ever, than any so-called assault weapon ever. Pistols, way more. Handguns, way more than any so-called assault weapon. They don't know what it is. All they know is it's scary. It scares me. It makes me feel bad. I want to ban it. That's the position here. And this is not the we've seen this before. Every so often a lefty gets into a position where they have to answer questions here about this, and they have no idea what they're banning. They have no idea. Do you remember this? This is an infamous clip, but it's old now, so it may have drifted from memory. 2007, there was a host on this network called MSNBC. 2007. The guy's name was Tucker Carlson. You may be familiar with that name. He was on MSNBC at the time. He was a host. I know, it was a different era entirely. And he had a New York congresswoman on by the name of Carolyn McCarthy, who was trying to ban a certain piece of equipment for guns called a barrel shroud. She was trying to ban barrel shrouds. So Tucker thought, well, you're a member of Congress. You're trying to ban barrel shrouds. You may as well be able to answer what a barrel shroud is. What's a barrel shroud?
In February, you introduced the Assault Weapons Ban and Law Enforcement Protection Act of 2007. It would regulate semi-automatic assault weapons, including weapons that have pistol grips, a forward grip, and something called a barrel shroud. Weapons with a barrel shroud would be regulated. What's a barrel shroud, and why should we regulate it?
I think the more important thing is that it also would have had banned the large capacity clips that Colin Ferguson had used, and also the killer.
Even that she got wrong. She means magazines.
Okay. But I read the legislation. I'm sorry. I read the legislation, and it said that it would regulate barrel shrouds. What's a barrel shroud, and why should we regulate that?
The guns that were chosen back in those days were basically the guns that most gangs and criminals were using to kill our police officers. I'm not saying it was the best bill, but that was the best bill they could get out at that particular time. I actually don't know what a barrel shroud is. I believe it's a shoulder thing that goes up.
No, it's not.
She goes, I think it's the shoulder thing that goes up, she says. There was the Hail Mary she threw on the end. He said, no, it's not. No, it's not. It's not that, but you're trying to ban it anyway. It's par for the course with these lefties. Well, it scares me, so I'm gonna ban it. Let me take a call here. I got Frank calling in from Ashburn, line 5. Frank, good afternoon. You're on the Vince Colonnese Show.
Good afternoon, Vince. Thanks for your great show and Loving America.
Thank you, sir.
I just wanted to point out one thing. Sure you know this, but when the left calls things an assault weapon, that came from the AR-15, and they said AR was an assault rifle. No, AR stood for Armalite. That's the company that won the contract to make it.
Right.
It's total mislabeling things, just like women's health care. It's not murdering babies, it's women's health care. They continue to corrode and deface our way to speak, and we got to call that back and stand for a moment.
For sure. Have you noticed how many of these battles are language battles, Frank? It's almost entirely, it starts as a language battle. So that in the pursuit of robbing you of liberty, they intentionally manipulate the language around all these really important issues.
Well, Vince, it's because and you know this, they don't have any legitimate leg to stand on any of their arguments. So it has to be a lie, and it's cleverly disguised. It's what the right refuses to do, which I'm in agreement. You shouldn't do that. But we don't call them out enough on all these things. We really don't.
Right.
If you listen to anybody on the left, they don't have any arguments that really make sense, as you say, if you delve into it. But by using fanciful language, it can make something sound heinous that's really a great thing, and something that's bad to sound really great, just like the murdering of children.
Of course. And this is why, Frank, this goes to a point that, that Donald Trump has been trying to make lately. Have you noticed he keeps referring to, is it migrant crime? Is that the phrase he keeps relying on lately? He keeps talking about migrant crime. The idea here is he wants to make sure people can emphasize on this particular category. We have illegal aliens committing crimes in the United States. The left tries to smuggle it into other data, hide it, pretend like it's not going on. And Trump is saying, no, this needs to be elevated. We need to make sure you can't fix a problem unless you can identify it. So you've got to identify it. And the left very much works against that when it works against their politics. You're right, Frank. Thank you very much. It's a good call. And you're right about AR, standing for Armalite. It's an update for you. Yeah, there's on what's going on in New York with Donald Trump and Letitia James. Remember, up there in New York, the Democrats up there are trying to impoverish Donald Trump. They want to take $500 million away from him. And they are champing at the bit right now, salivating that they can start seizing his properties. Yes. Steal his property. And remember, as a part of that decision to accuse Trump of defrauding banks, none of whom actually made that allegation. They were all happy with doing business with Trump. He paid them all back for their loans. The judge, Engoron, said, Mar-a-Lago, that beautiful Palm Beach estate, it's only worth $18 million. Trump lied about the value of that property, claiming it's worth hundreds of millions of dollars. What a liar he is. And CNN's been running around saying that too. But then last night on CNN, they were talking about ways Trump could come up with the money to pay the bond, and here's how they assess it.
You need at least 30 days to get any of these properties sold. But the property that you alluded to, Mar-a-Lago, potentially that could be something that could be sold quickly. I think the valuation is something in the hundreds of millions, and I think there could be a buyer for something like that.
And that would be literally, if you're talking about doing that between now and Monday, that's picking up the phone, calling someone, and then literally writing a check.
Yeah, I mean, there could be plenty of international people who want to buy that property. I mean, there's properties that are priced at 150 and 200 million that are nearby that. And Palm Beach is like the NVIDIA, of real estate. It's just shot up like a rocket. And people do want to live there. They've moved there. So I think that would be the best case scenario as to property. If he's trying to sell quickly, I would encourage that.
So, all right. Now, that's $240 million estimated. I mean, who knows? He's a desperate seller. In this case, someone picks up the phone and makes that call this week. So I don't know what it'd be.
Wait.
That's still half.
I'm sorry.
Of what it would be.
I thought you were telling me Mar-a-Lago was worth $18 million, and Donald Trump was a big liar for saying it was worth hundreds of millions. Now you're telling me that he can sell the property for at least $240 million to come up with the money for the case where the judge claims it's worth $18 million? Does that make any sense? Did you pause for a moment to think, boy, our listeners, our viewers must be deeply confused right now? Or do you just barrel forward? I think they just barreled forward. Also, I like the suggestion about, Trump could sell it to a foreign buyer. Really? So if Trump sold Mar-a-Lago to a foreign buyer, what do you think the storyline would be heading into the election? Trump makes money off of foreigners. Yeah. It's always a scandal under every rock. Hey, coming up next, the great one, Mark Levin.